People, welcome to another Black Eyes TV 7 production. Once again, bringing you information on various subject matters, and today we're with a panel of guests.
By myself.
And the show is going to be called The Ancestral Voices of Kings and Queens today. As usual, I'm here with my co-host Terry Riggs. Speak to the people then, Terry.
Hi people, hi everyone. I hope you're going to enjoy a powerful show today, as we've got DALIAN and the beautiful wife, and we've got the main presenters for today, the Kings and Queens. Sister Mut, you know, it's your choice, your time, and your play. Fire away, sister.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for coming into our interview today. We've got DeLeon and Verona and of Ancestral Voices, and we want them on the show for not just for the fact that they've done some fantastic work and been a great contribution to our community, but also we're interested in how Ancestral Voices allows for us as a community to enter our relationships and the importance of that showing up inside of our relationships. What can we bring from our ancestors into our relationships? We know that statistically that the Black relationship is in crisis. We know that our sons are in crisis. We know that our daughters are in crisis. And we're really interested in, at this point, from Kings and Queens United being a platform for sustainable relationships, to build on healthy relationships. We create platforms for speakers to come through. We build on relationships. We create events, couples events, relationship events, and workshops, so that we can allow our community, give our community enough space and enough room for them to develop and build on the relationships that they have, and enter and create a space for them to create a new relationship if they want one. So we wanted to bring here, we've got a campaign right now that you'll be seeing many of our shows coming up between now and the 16th of December, where we'll be having an event at the Island Rock Cafe. We'll be doing an event there to celebrate the successes of relationships of Kings and Queens, and also it's our first Earth Day. So we're in a position where we want to enjoy the power of the people in our community, you know, look at the speakers that we have around us, draw on their wisdom. Like they say, when an elder dies, a library dies with them. So our ancestors are here right now on Earth, and we want to be able to have a conversation with those who are connected to the ancestors, those who understand the dynamics of the ancestors, the systems and the principles. So we welcome DeLeon and we welcome Verona. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having us.
So please do tell us a little bit about yourself. So anybody who is coming on for the very first time, and anyone who doesn't know anything about your work, please, by all means, just introduce yourselves.
Yes.
Hi. Yes. So what can I say? I'm Verona from Ancestral Voices. We've been working for the last 7 years now on a documentary series that deals with African spirituality and African spiritual philosophy, and that was born out of our own.
Can I just pause you? Can I just have you? Can we see you camera?
Oh,
here. So take just wherever the camera is, just take a look right into the camera's lens.
Oh, look directly into the
There you go. But just move it. If you're speaking, that will be helpful, because then.
Yeah, no problem. So yes, so we started the documentary series 7 years ago, and that was born out of our own spiritual journeys, just going for the path of questioning, and coming to that realization that how can we reach a certain point in our lives, but yet be so clueless when it comes to our own African spiritual heritage. And so that led on to reading and researching, asking questions. We found that we asked people within our family and friends and so forth, but just even asking questions about this can get you isolated from your own family and friend network. So it was quite a lonely path, and we both started this before we actually met each other. And then when we did meet each other, it was like, wow, okay, you've been questioning this as well, you think about this as well. And DALIAN introduced me to the book of Water and the Spirit by Maladona Some. And for me, it answered so many questions that I had within myself at that time. And it was just confirmation that I was on the right path. And I think events like that led to us just making the decision that we're going to make this film. We both have creative backgrounds anyway, myself. I've had involvement in video production before, mainly more on a sort of organizing project management side. But then it kind of spurred me on to want to do my own projects. And this to me was something I felt deeply passionate about. I was 28 when I started this journey, and up until that point, I thought that I was quite clever, I thought I was quite smart, I thought I questioned the world. But then I was amazed. I was like, wow, how could this be in front of my face the whole time? But I'm so oblivious to my own knowledge, my own history, my own culture. So yeah, that was our motivating force, really. Has it cut out?
No. I think the phone died. Hi, hello? Sister Lute? You're mute, you're mute. Tell her she's mute.
I know Ritchie can hear me. Terry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Everyone, okay, perfect. So I need to see your faces in the camera. So could you shift in a little bit between you? Because all we're getting is two hairs. No, not me. I'm talking to DeLeon and his wife. I can hardly see you both.
Oh, really? Yeah, we can see them fine.
I can hardly see you. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, just only little bits of you. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, so just moving slightly. Okay, so tell me a little bit about when you met, because obviously those who are here are going to want to know, and those who are interested in kings and queens are going to want to know, you know, okay, a power couple we have. We're very fortunate and very blessed to have a power couple in the studio here. So how, tell me how long ago you met, and you know, how long have you been in a relationship, and how long have you been married?
Okay, yeah, we met at a friend's barbecue. A friend of mine, I believe he was turning 30 then. Yeah, so we met at his 30th birthday party in Brixton. And we found out that we lived about 10 minutes away from each other. So literally, I could walk to Verona's house. It was just down the road. So you know, we got talking, and we found out that we shared a lot of interest. You know what I mean? In different subjects. You know, she liked to question things, quite deep into her conspiracy theories at the time, which has now calmed down a little bit, so we can apply some rationality in other senses. So yeah, so obviously, you know, we had a good rapport. We built a good rapport, and living close enough to each other was also a blessing. Do you know what I mean? But I think it really got to that stage where, because at the time I was already engaged in quite a lot of ancestral practices, you know. So I think there was a day she came to my house. It was a Sunday, because that's when I just tend to try and fit in with the cycle that we live. It's when I try and do, should we say, the rituals for the week ahead. And I forgot when she came to ring the doorbell that I had everything out, you know, in the living room. So when she came in, she asked, "Oh, what is that?" And I thought, "Oh no, you know, I forgot. I should have hidden it." But then, because she wasn't too fazed by what she saw, you know, it gives you a good sense that, okay, yeah, this person is open to really understanding what African spiritual practices are about, you know, because often you find that a lot of people seem to think they know what African practices are about, but the minute you get to the real deal, so to speak, all of a sudden you realize that they're just dealing with you on an intellectual level. Yes, and really, intellect without action is a waste of time. So you know, I said, okay, this girl's serious. You know, she wants to get in. She just doesn't want to think about it and make it sound like everything African is Kemet, or Kemet is everything African, because there are other traditions that Kemet itself draws from. So, you know, we need to respect those as well. So based on that, you know, I incorporated in some of the rituals. And the rest, as they say, is history, isn't it? Yeah. So we were married a year later. So we've been married now for 7 years and been together for 8.
Lovely, that's wonderful. And so maybe then tell us a little bit about, you know, how you and your wife, lovely wife, use African principles and systems inside of your relationship.
Okay. So, well, now it's no longer just us. It's actually, we have 2 children as well now, so 2 boys. So one of the things that we do is we do utilize ritual in our individual selves, but also as a family unit. So one of the things we do is every Sunday we have a sort of prayer at our family altar, which the children are involved in, and it's something that we use to put forth our intentions for the week ahead, and also give thanks for the past week, and also just to kind of unify the family unit as well. It's a nice opportunity for us to all get together and, you know, call in those energies and give us the strength to help the guidance that we need to move forward. And we feel that that's something that we do that we feel is very strengthening to the family and unifies us all as well. You're muted again.
I think that might be Ritchie. Ritchie, we can't hear. Nah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, clearly.
Perfect. Okay, so let's create the levels. Let's create some synchronicity in the levels then, and then we'll be on time with that. Okay, so how old are your children, if you don't mind me asking?
2 and 6, 2 boys.
So how did they, I mean, myself, I'm a person who's I would consider myself to be quite a ritualistic person. So Bonfu Soulmate is, you know, I respect her work so deeply. Husband of Maladoma Soulmate, for those who don't, husband is Maladoma Soulmate, or ex-husband. So I appreciate her work on family, her work on women, her work on relationships. I mean, she really goes quite hard, which I think is really beautiful. And she just has a lovely way about how she presents it. You know, the 2 of them do, but she just, yeah, she touches me. So I recognize ritual in my life, but I suppose it's interesting to know how it is for children, because in today's society, I mean, I'm a person who has an ancestors bowl, offerings, that's the kind of thing I do, but and my children know it. I have 3 boys, so my children know that, and they've been raised with it sort of from the beginning. But how do you feel, you know, you've 2 small children, how easy is it, do you feel, I mean, for you to be able to present that to them, for them to because we're dealing with family now, it's not just relationships, but the family unit. How do you feel that assists them in their growth and their development?
Okay.
Well, I think it's very useful. It's very important because, for instance, the eldest son, he can recognize when he gets synchronicities of what he expresses at the altar. Yes, so it's not. It's very real for him. You know, he sees the experience, he sees the relevance, and for the younger one, obviously, he will also just, I guess, take after the older one because he tries to be like him in just about every way possible, you know. So they can see the relevance, and he can see why it's important, you know. And we teach it to them, so it's normal. It's a normal process, you know. And they won't grow up to be like us, where we were first spooked by it before we could come to understand it as we do now, you know. So it's very important for them because then they grow up not thinking this is some woo-boo stuff. Yeah, and that fear element is taken away. They can see the relevance of it because they've seen the expressions within their lives and they understand and value it. So yeah, it's very key.
to their families and their children. This is an opportunity for you to really learn from the experts. So, you know, really take note. So I really want to, I suppose, go on to ask you, you know, what you feel between you, because it could be a separate answer, but between you, this is a question for both of you, what you feel the true purpose and nature is of relationships.
Okay.
Okay. I'll have a go.
And spirit. Yeah,
Oh.
and the spirit of relationships, the true spirit, the true nature, and the true purpose of it.
Yeah. I would say that there's one definitive answer to that, because the way spirit is so open to interpretation, and there's so many different meanings. And even when you do get certain insights and revelations, you find that on top of that, there still can be multiple other explanations as well. So one of the things I would definitely say I can acknowledge is two people coming together and acknowledging what each person has to offer. So I can learn from DALIAN, he can learn from me. We were doing our work separately, but by coming together, we were able to create Ancestral Voices. And I'm not too sure if that would have existed if we didn't come together. I think in terms of relationships as well, it's about how can not only you work as individuals and how you can develop separately, but also how by your unification, what can you bring forth from that? So we've also brought forth two boys, how we go on to raise them, and their purpose in this world is also something about why we've come together. So I'd say that relationships is not just about necessarily having children. I think it's about what you learn from each other. I mean, if we look at, say, Subonfu Some and Maladona Some, they actually did split up. But then if we look at the great knowledge that they brought forth in this world, it shows that relationships are not necessarily about being married to the very end and you die together. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but it's about what did your unification bring forward. And so I think there can be many different reasons for many people coming together. So yeah, it's hard to kind of wrap up in a summaries, but yeah, I think it's just a case of the journey that you go through together, and throughout that journey, what is it that you can produce? What do you learn from each other? What can you stand to gain? And I would hope as well that that unification can also have a great impact beyond just yourselves, but hopefully to a wider audience as well.
Yeah, sure. Just kind of continuing from Verona's point, you know, one of the conceptions within African philosophy, spiritual philosophy, is that the concept of what we call God is a masculine and a feminine. Yes? So a relationship in itself between man and woman represents that very idea. And we know this because it's man and woman only that bring forth children. Yes, it's their union. So the true, well, one of the true nature and purposes of relationships is to keep that cycle or circle of life moving or going forward. Yes, it's the way life continues. Yes, but then again, as Vios has also already mentioned before, there can be many spiritual purposes for why people get together. And it doesn't always, it's not the same as the Western concept where it's about just having a family and you have children or whatever else, you know? Like we said, you know, if the two of us hadn't met, perhaps we wouldn't have created Ancestral Voices. Or even if we had been with different people, maybe we would have created different things because our interests would have aligned with other things. Yes, so even beyond the relationship, there are other factors that are at play that unless you're working with spirit and inviting it in to your interaction through ritual, you never even really get to understand the purpose of why you're together in the first place, maybe, and the reason for why you need to be together. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, these are some of the facets of the nature and purpose of relationships from that African perspective.
Now listen, people, I'm just going to interject quickly in the conversation and just let everybody know that today's show, as always, has been a technical mismatch on every level, but we're getting it done. I want to thank Kings and Queens so far for conducting the interview and talking. We've just been joined as well by Sister Mutt's partner in crime, Tamar, from Kings and Queens United, and also obviously our special guest today is DeLeon and his wife, talking about the spiritual aspects of relationships. And obviously I'm joined by my partner in crime, Terry Riggs, holding up the ship as always. So again, for all the people that don't know, today's show is the Ancestral Voices of Kings and Queens. How you doing, T? You made it in, yeah? Do you want to say something to the people before we get back into the interview? Let me just turn up your mic, my dear. Go on, talk so we can hear you.
Just saying thank you for all the help in sorting out the technical difficulties, and thanks for getting the show rolling. I'm just easing in, and I can hear that it's a fantastic conversation so far. Thank you so much, DeLeon and Verona. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. You're most welcome.
Okay. So I just wanted to go back a little bit on what you were saying about inviting spirit into your relationships. When you say that, for anyone who's more novice about it or is new to them, what does that mean? What do you see is a way of inviting spirit into the relationship when you say that from your perspective?
You invite spirit in via the rituals you can conduct, you know. You can call it, it can be as simple as calling it, you know, asking, verbally, because your words carry power, yeah, and it's an energy that you emit. It's not just sounds or words you're making, you're actually letting out energy. So, you know, it's in the same regard, you call in spirit, because again, when we go into the African conceptions, you realize that even what we do not see with the physical eye still has an existence, if you want to call it that, yes? So we're speaking to many beings that we might not even know. So one of the great things to do is to call it in, and perhaps one of the things you can do is invite that in at the time when you're pouring a libation. Yes, and you say, you know, whatever spirit or energies are out there that can assist us in our relationship, yeah, that can assist us in keeping balance between these two energies. Come in and show us the signs. It literally can be as simple as that. People make things too complex. Yes, that in itself is that invitation, that invocation that you need, literally. Yeah, so without giving you anything complex, because for other complex things, you might need to get deep in your studies. Yeah, yeah. Ritchie, Mike.
Yes, I'm just getting settled in now.
Okay. Sister Mutt, we can't hear. Can you repeat that, because the mic didn't come on at that time?
Okay. Well, you just kind of touched on this a little while ago. It can help to kind of balance out any issues that may be in a relationship or any imbalances out there. So it could be a case of there could be some sort of negative energy on the back of an argument or something. You can use some of the practices for cleansing, for say cleansing the space, allowing time to sit down in a circle to air out the. So any tensions or built up frustration can just be dealt with. Because a lot of people can get upset about things, go to bed upset, and that energy is still lingering. That's a nice way to kind of purify and get rid of it. In addition to that, I would say there's things that you can do. So one particularly, speaks heavily on rituals and relationships. One of them is being back to back sitting, and you're able to talk to each other, not facing each other, but through the back-to-back connection, so you're physically touching. But because you're not looking at each other, you have that freedom, that openness to speak about whatever issue, you know, that whatever issues you may have, or something that you may not feel comfortable saying directly. So there are many practices within our traditions that we can use to benefit relationships, and I feel that there's so much knowledge to be gained if we only take time to learn more about our ancestors. And relationships is one of the many areas where there's help available.
And also, just to add to that, this is why we recommend to all your listeners, and that is very important to get Sobonfu's book, Intimacy
The
of
Spirit of Intimacy.
Yes,
Spirit of Intimacy. Yeah.
Because
conflict ritual is very good.
Yes, it's a good in point. And again, Sobonfu really is the only author who has gone deep on that level, because you see, much of this information is what they would teach young people during rites of passage. So it's not information that is literally given or you will find out there in the same manner that we found the material to help correlate and make our work. On relationship, no, it's not, because women and men are put through a particular process. Yes, and that's what we know now as the rites of passage. Because these things don't exist so much more, people's work like Sobonfu's is critical and essential for us to pick out what we need to be able to utilize in the now.
I will just hold that up for anyone who has not seen that. That's a must buy.
Yes.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I think in experiencing the conflict ritual myself in the past, in fact, even with my own children, it's a great exercise to do with your children when they have conflict. Sit back to back, talk it out. You know, it takes the heat off of an argument. It's very, very powerful. And if you are, say, in a whatever dynamic you're in, say it's a love or friendship, the back-to-back experience actually disperses some of that energy, and then it dissipates a lot of it, and whatever natural feelings you have for that person comes back round. It's almost cyclical.
That's
right. So it's very, very, very powerful. So, you know, again, I suppose we've talked a little bit about ritual already, but obviously there's a lot of relationships that don't experience ritual or don't know they experience ritual. More to the point.
That's
right. So they're doing things automatic and an automatic response without necessarily knowing actually this is one of our rituals, our love rituals, or you know, a modern day ritual might be, oh, kiss you before you leave. It's a modern day ritual in its own self, but at the same time there are other aspects of, like you said a little bit earlier, about pouring libation and calling in the ancestors and calling in spirits. Those things become important. Why do you think they become so important? Because you've already answered the question about how to use ritual on some level, but why is it so important?
Well, you see, it is very important because of how it primes your mind. Yes, this is what's key, because, so for instance, when you step into that circle, you know why you stepped into that circle. Yes, and we can draw a simple analogy, for instance, with work. When you walk into your workplace, you know why you're there. Do you understand? So it gives us psychological references. Yeah, that will then shape our behavior automatically. Yes. So, for instance, you're pouring a libation. You know, it's a sacred act. How you even behave as you're doing that is based on how you've understood ritual and the importance of that ritual you're doing. Do you understand? So, it's the psychological priming that is important, because you know you've dedicated this time or this space to do X, Y, Z. And as a result, when you get there, you're more willing. So, for instance, you're having an argument. The argument will be going on without any form of resolution. But then, as you've stepped into the circle, you know what the circle is there for. So you come in with that readiness. Yes? So this is why it's all about the healing, the psychological programming that goes on here. It preps you to take appropriate action.
Cool. And I also add to that as well. I was just also going to say that, for example, if you're calling on your own ancestors, if you're about to begin a ritual, you're ultimately awakening aspects of your own DNA because your ancestors are you. So by making these connections with spirit, we shouldn't look at it as something as separate from ourselves. So even if we're calling in a particular nature force, once again, these aspects of nature exist within our bodies anyway, whether because of the water energy or it could be a fire energy, all of these things are already us. So by engaging in ritual, what we're ultimately doing is awakening aspects of our being that are pretty much lying dormant until we call upon those energies. And by calling upon their energies, it's like what DALIAN says, you now become present, you now become in that moment, in that space, ready to create the change that you have intended at that point in time. So on that reason alone, I'd say ritual is very important if we want to step out of our sort of 9-to-5 being and step into our full creative mode as the sort of power beings that we actually have the ability to do these things. We can hear you now.
Always dedicate to all black school and understanding that we always need to buy black. As for instance, DALIAN has his film, and which is the part 2. He's got the book. You need to hit him up, keep on buying so he can grow.
That's right.
That's what it's about. If you have the opportunity and you can't get hold of DALIAN, you'll be supplying many schools and many shops with the books and other stuff. So like I always say to black shops, like the Ankwell Bean in Shepherd's Bush, you can buy products, you can buy black products, whatever you need, it's there. You can go to Brixton Hill, Pansy, 102. You can buy products, you can buy books, you can buy. The more we grow is the more we can succeed. Now DALIAN has his events as well. If you can find out and Google it up, go to the cinemas and pack it out. That's what it's about, you know? So, and at the same time, as we've got the kings and queens, we need to go to these events so that we can go as couples and enjoy, because sometimes we have to free ourselves and to understand ourselves by opening each other's minds. So what I always say is keep black, buy black, and stay black. So Mut, kick it away again. She's gone silent on us again. The gods are calling. Is Tamira there? Is Sister Tamira there? Okay. We need to hear your voice.
I do have a few questions, but feel free to submit.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. Okay, so, all right. So the thing, now we've talked a little bit about rituals, libation, yeah, and that's become, you know, it's become quite a normal, I say normal practice, it's quite a common practice, yeah. Even in America, when somebody loses a friend, they, you know, they pour alcohol, you know, there's this kind of libation vibration, if you like, that goes on. People don't even necessarily know that they're doing libation when they're doing it, yeah. Just pour one for my homies type of thing, right? But then you have, obviously, you go to, you know, you're in different environments where libation is poured. Now let's look at we've looked at libation and the importance of calling on our ancestors, and our ancestors even coming into invoking our ancestors to come into our relationships. What other rituals do you feel, that rituals for living, can we adopt from our ancient systems and culture?
Well, you know, we have over 10 pages in the book that we released.
Well, let's just get a few. Like, so if you could throw a few that we could just say, you know what, we're ready to go.
I'm thinking of which ones you need. And you know, exactly as you said, with what we might call the continuity of ancestral practices. Yes, there's a lot of things that we intuitively do that we're not even aware that this is coming all the way from the motherland. You know, we think it's stuff that we've created. As you said, you know, we think we're pouring liquor for the homies, but this all you're doing is remembering an ancestral practice. Yeah. One of the things really I think that will be useful for people is the water that they drink. Yes. And before you drink, this is going beyond libation now, is making that connection with the water. Yes. Allowing the water or the creative element in water to manifest things for you. And this you can do by, you know, holding the vessel that contains the water, speaking into the water that which you would like to manifest. So, you know, if it's issues in your relationship that you know you want to resolve, you speak into the water. Yes. And you can either use it for a libation or go and leave it out as an offering overnight outside. Yes, because it's an offering for ancestors and any other energies that might be present. And then the next day you share some with the earth and drink the rest. Basically taking that which you have requested. So that's one thing that I can add. Verona will add another one, then I can add another one too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was actually just going to say, having an altar or a sacred space in your home is something that I would recommend everybody to do. I'm not saying that you have to have an altar, but I think by having one, it gives you a dedicated area in your home, but also in your mind that allows you to kind of connect with spirit. And I think with all the craziness we have in our lives, that just having that time to yourself, to have an altar and where you can make a prayer for any particular purpose. So it could be a case of, I need healing of a particular part of my being. It could be an illness, or it could be a blockage that you're facing, or it could be a case of you're focused on getting a particular job. And so that altar now can be used as a means to dedicate and focus your prayers for that particular purpose. And I think through that time, you get to tap into yourself, learn about different practices you can do, because you will even receive the intuition on, okay, let's just add this to the altar. Let's put this white candle, or you may get an idea to put a certain herb even, or a particular stone or crystal. And I think by doing these acts, just engaging in regular ritual anyway, will teach you to how to gain and develop more. But an altar is definitely I would say probably one of the first things you can do to start that journey on implementing ritual in your life.
That's great. Go ahead, DeLeon.
Oh yeah, nah. You have a good memory, right? I thought you forgot it. That was gonna add
No.
Yeah, fire as a ritual to cleanse. Yes. So you know, find times and opportunities where, you know, if you have any loads of old papers, yeah, that you want to basically get rid of, it's cluttering your house, don't get it up. You can put it in a fire ritual and have these papers be symbolic of some of the negative things that you want to get rid of, that you want to cleanse, you know, that you don't need in your life anymore. Yes. And so even as the fire starts again, as I said, you speak these things to the fire. Yes. And because the fire in itself carries its own energy too. That as you're doing that act symbolically, that it will transmutate into a literal representation of that which you're asking to get rid of. So yeah.
And on the back of what DALIAN just mentioned with fire, when I was in Haiti doing the filming for Ancestral Voices, one of the things I was taught while I was there is that if you actually have a fire burning, like an open fire, you can actually walk around the fire, you know, going clockwise and then counterclockwise. And whilst doing that process, you can ask for prayers, so you may be healing for your body, and you do that whilst walking around the fire. And basically the fire is a way to create that change within your body. So that's another thing you can also do with fire.
I mean, now that we're talking about elements, if we're just taking like water and we're taking fire, what rituals, I mean, these two, if you like, what rituals can you say are available out of, say, the element of air and the element of earth?
Okay, well, earth, you can bury things in the earth. So it could be a case of you may have a particular sacred stone that you put in the ground for your own purpose, and that stone will have its own meaning, whether it's a particular crystal which has its own meaning. But you can also give offerings to the earth. So it could be palm oil or something like that, that you are pouring it on the earth in the same way you would do a libation, but you make that prayer as you are leaving these offerings in the earth. So that's how earth can be utilized. In terms of air, that can also be done using incense. So all different incense have their own meanings and purposes. So by burning frankincense in your home is still representative of an air ritual, and that brings about cleansing. So yeah, there's every different element has its own being of how it can be utilized.
Perfect, that's great. And I suppose, and again, maybe just coming back to, I mean, you talked a little bit about frankincense. I don't know if you use sage as well, but what rituals do you think are important? And this is probably the most important question, really, in terms of the God so far. Is, you know, we know that the relationship, the Black relationship, statistically, they're saying that it's 7 out of 10 Black relationships that are failing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, there's no parent in the home type of thing. There's only one parent. So we know that the Black relationship is in crisis. We know that there's lots of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that people get, like, you know, there's jealousy, there's, you know, the whole dynamic when somebody's, you know, building something. You know, we do have this kind of, there's a nature, if you like, the negatives in our community.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at and see it for what it can be sometimes. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay. You can't hear me. Hello. Hello. Hi. Okay. So could you hear anything? Nothing. Right. Okay.
No.
Right. So I'll say it again. Right.
That's
so
fine.
so we do know that some of the relationships we do, statistically, it's saying that 7 out of 10 of our relationships in the Black community are failing, or there's one parent in the home. These kinds of statistics, negative statistics. We also know that, you know, in our communities, you know, we're struggling to find self. A lot of us are still struggling to find self. And when we're looking at trying to find ourselves, often we're, you know, there's a tug of war, there's a push and pull between, you know, the new self and the old, and cleansing and ridding ourselves of our, if you like, our negatives, our egos. Yeah. And that can show up in the form of jealousy, envy, spite, revenge. You see young people right now dealing with revenge energy. It's a very powerful energy that they're using, a warrior energy that they're using, though they're not able to harness it in the right way right now, a lot of the young people. So when you look at relationships, what do you feel? And I think this is one of the most important questions that we can ask you as well, especially given your field. What would you say is important rituals to do in order to protect your relationship and to protect your union?
First of all, you can do any ritual that you want, right? But if you haven't done the work on the self, you're pretty much wasting your time. Yes, and unfortunately, and I personally don't think this is just a Black problem per se. We're only aware of it because we happen to be quote unquote Black. Yes, so it's more visible to us. Yes, but people don't. You see, this is one of the key things when you're living in or with spirit, is how much it expands your mind so that you are aware of many possibilities. Do you understand? And that can also encourage you to be more understanding. But if you have this myopic viewpoint that is based on perhaps what a Western relationship is supposed to look like, you take the person to the cinema, you eat some chocolates, you're drinking some champagne on your anniversary day, and that is your only, yes, that actually a relationship entails, then when you're not seeing these fairy tale things, you start to get upset. Yes, and then as a consequence, you end up either taking it out on your partner, or even most importantly, you end up sabotaging yourself. And will be the one messing up your own relationship. Do you understand? Only because your awareness is this wide. Yeah, well, through no fault of our own. Yeah, it's not our fault. We've been dispersed all over the world, of course. However, we can still do the work on ourselves. Yes, and I think it's very important, because often you find that relationship, there's people trying to change each other when they themselves have a lot to change within themselves. So, two things I recommend. People need to first start working on themselves, because let's not forget the purpose of, you know, what we might call African spiritual cosmology is one thing and one thing only: development of self. Yes, the Kemetic proverb says it all: know thyself. In Yoruba, you have the concept of Iwapele. Yes, your only form of, if you want to call it salvation, is you're developing good character. Because when you're developing that character, you're aligning yourself well with each and everything. Even those who think they might be out to dupe you, you will be seen far ahead of them. Yeah, you will be able to sidestep that. So I will share some rituals anyway, because like all things, you know, you can try, but the most important thing I'll say is it has to start with the work on the self. In terms of protection rituals, you know, there's and again, some of these are not really for the non-initiates. You know, there's things you can do with oh goodness, with there's things you can do with nails. Sorry. Yeah, you can use a holly too. You know, the
Cactus.
Go on then.
So I was just going to say, like, if you're looking within nature, if you look at things like holly or cactuses, they are like protecting plants. And so things like that, you could have them in the home or at the front of your home, and that keeps everybody within that environment safe and protected. There's also different stones, whether it's a case of you may carry, like I think tourmaline, black stones are also known to protect you from negative energies as well. So you can have that either on your person or under your pillow. So there's a few examples of what can be done.
You can also use salt or sage, as you already mentioned from before, which you can use to constantly cleanse, so that, you know, any bad energies that you carry from outside and you bring in, yes, you can dissipate those easily. Yes, salt in itself in parts of your house.
Regular spiritual baths, which contain frankincense and things like that. And salt, once again, salt and frankincense in the bath are ways to keep cleansing. So particularly if you feel in kind of weighed down by some negative energies, maybe people are jealous of your relationship and those type of things, then having regular baths will definitely help to kind of keep that at bay. Actually, bay rum as well, not bay leaf, isn't it?
Bay leaf, yeah.
Bay leaf is also good for
nutmeg,
strength and protection for yourself too. We can't hear you.
It's a little bit of digital delay there. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate those things. I think it's using what you have. What I hear from the conversation that we've had thus far has a lot to do with using what we have already in nature, or what we have around us.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah, drawing on what we have around us, whether it's our ancestors, whether it's the elements, whether it's, you know, things in your kitchen cupboard, you know, whether it's the plants that you buy, you know, it's all interlinked.
Always.
And therefore it's all part of us.
Yes.
And it makes sense for us to draw, you know, not be one dimensional.
Yeah.
Think, okay, well, it's important just to, you know, I love him, he loves me, that's it, that's about as far as it goes.
If it was that easy.
Then it would be, it would be working out, wouldn't it?
No, all the time, all the time.
All the time.
And
go ahead.
So I was just going to say, another thing that I picked up whilst in Haiti as well is that if you put a basil plant at the front of your home, if someone with any negative or bad intention towards you comes past it, the basil plant will physically wilt. So you will see the change in the plant itself. So they kind of refer to it as a spiritual detector. So if anybody wishes you ill harm or anything, it will show, and then you'll know not to let them in your premises. So you can keep that at the front of your house, so then you know, okay, this person, no, they can't enter my home.
Me too.
Talking about, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes, great. Okay, so they talk about I mean, people talk about plants and talking to plants, but plants are energy, they're living, so it makes sense that they are, receptors.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that you, with what you're saying around it wilting with some, I mean, that's a great indicator, and I think that's important. I mean, if people, whatever people take away from this, that's a really important one, because a lot of people don't know who's in their force field, who's in their present surroundings. Sometimes you have people in your surroundings that are really good friends, relationships, and then suddenly things are falling apart, or you've moved on, or you've met someone, and that shifts the dynamic. And those things, we don't necessarily see these subtleties in the changes that happen within that person. So looking for the signs, which is what you said early on in the relationship, in terms of your signs of why you came together, all the different signs inside the relationship, that, if you like, the law of confirmation then, allows you to really kind of like connect at all times and see the, the significance and the power of your relationship. And it makes sense that you can build upon that. If you're seeing so much law of confirmation about something you said, and then something that happens, or somebody says, talks about a flower, and then you get to see it, the flower there and then, it makes sense that those signs and wonders are taken into account in your daily life. Why wouldn't they? Animals do it.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
and on the back of that, sorry, can I add? I was just going to say, what you were talking about, signs and confirmations and synchronicities. One of the things when I started along this path is I kept seeing the number 11 everywhere. And to the point where I could see it, I would look at the clock, I'll see it about 7-8 times a day. So I knew that it wasn't a coincidence, and I even dubbed it Ancestor time. And then I met DALIAN, whose birthday is on the 11th, and his telephone number ends in 111. So there was just so many different correlations that it's like, I see you, ancestors, I see you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. So, I really appreciate you being able to bring the essence of, what you know, and also the essence of, spirit, of the elements into your relationship, and how well it's obviously, it helps with your family setting as well. You can see how holistic the practices are, and the importance of those practices inside of relationship. People take it for granted. They go out to a party, they come back, they might drink, not drink, they're not seeing all the rituals around them. And like you're saying, it is, first and foremost, know thyself. Because when you know yourself, you'll see the synchronicities start to show up.
That's right.
Yeah, they show up, constantly. There's a constant conversation in your life, like, oh, that happened and that happened. I mean, my sons and I, we have this synchronicity conversation all the time, and I definitely, and that comes from the more you know yourself. I believe the more you know yourself, the more synchronicity.
100%.
Life aligns with you the more you know yourself.
Yes. Because you are tuning yourself with natural law. So you will fall into the cycle of nature. And exactly the point you were making about the plants. Let's not forget, you see, because I guess it's so simple in this thought, we miss a lot of it out, because we've grown up in a world where they try to make everything so complex. Yeah, and the complex ones have everything and the rest don't. But at the very simplest level, when you think about it, the human body on death, it disintegrates back to nature. We cannot tell the difference between your decomposed body and what we call the earth. So are you really a human being, or are you the earth? Do you understand? So some of these are the things that we need to ponder on to change our paradigm and to understand how we can fit ourselves into a natural universal law and not just be stuck in a man-made construct only. Yeah, because we lose a lot of power that way.
I would agree. And I really appreciate that, you know, you're really offering us real, you know, real jewels, real wisdom, and things that are practical, because people don't think spirituality is practical. Yeah, they think it's something that, you know, woo woo,
Yeah.
or you meditate all day, or you don't eat, or
Yeah.
you know, or you have to be eating greens all day and live like, you know, like you know, a hermit, whatever it is. People have these kind of connotations with, yeah. And you know, I think it's really important that, you know, the practical essence of, you know, and spiritual aspects of a relationship, they're married together. Yeah, I think they can't have really one without the other, especially in a Black relationship where we are the mothers and fathers of civilization. It's, you know, a no-brainer really to be bringing, you know, our ancestral, our cultural, our spiritual, our indigenous practices. You know, if we call ourselves conscious, or we say to ourselves we know ourselves, then it only makes sense that it complements what we're up to and what we want to achieve. So yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Tamar.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Tamar, go ahead. Your mic.
Yeah, it's muted.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. I was away. Greetings. Powerful conversation to be a part of, to be you know, taken in, and I can see the viewers on YouTube as well. I can see that they're there, so I hope that they are finding it beneficial. So shouting out to everyone listening in from YouTube. As I'm sitting here and I'm taking both of you guys in, Verona and DALIAN, you seem to be such an amazing power couple. And you know, the journey that you both are on together, that's teamwork, that's legacy, that's you know, unification. So all the things that Kings and Queens promote. If I can just take it one step back. So when I created Kings and Queens United, it was as a result of my own marriage had fallen into rock bottom, basically. And it's taking myself out of the situation and really trying to do quite a lot of research and understanding about relationships, and generally that's just where I thought the research ends, just understanding about relationship. And it's taken me on an incredible journey to the point of creating Kings and Queens United, as well as getting my relationship back on track again. At the time, a lot of what you guys are speaking about now, I had no idea about. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. And I suppose they say when your back's against the wall, that's when, you know, you find a way through. But I wanted to ask you guys, what's the most sort of challenging thing that you've been through in your relationship, and how has this blessed knowledge of African spirituality, how has that helped you through such challenging time?
Good question. I think the most challenging thing for us has been able to juggle our relationship, juggle having a family home, having now 2 children, and still producing a documentary that took 5 years to make. Now, bearing in mind our children are 2 and 6, so it feels like we have just literally come off the biggest roller coaster and longest roller coaster going. And I do believe that it's because of our spiritual practices, but also our genuine commitment to getting this work done, that I think that it's kept us even mentally sane. Like, so I would say that the strength that we've received is generally through the ancestors. There's no doubt in my mind that to do this Ancestral Voices project, that we were guided by the ancestors to do it. Like, they have literally gone through us and said, you know what, you're gonna do this. And we were determined to see it through the end. And I think that even though we may not always see it, they have always had our backs. And nobody really gets to see what happens behind the scenes, you know, staying up till late in the early morning hours, editing, going through scripts and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, the fact that we've put so much of our financial, you know, all of our savings into this project, like it's been a massive impact on all of us. And I think that without having that core grounding of saying, do you know what, this is bigger than us, that's what's kept us going. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much answered it. It's as I was telling Sister Nu earlier, that it gives you a sense of grounding. Yes, and when you get the synchronicities, you're reminded that you are connected to something far bigger than even your individual physical body as well as mind. Yeah, because you get the right suggestions of how to move forward and how to go around issues. Yes, and you put that into a discussion and you will smooth it out and you will walk forward, you know? So, yeah.
Awesome. So, like, okay, so with my I say previous relationship, I meant my marriage, but before separation, we didn't argue. We talked through everything. So you'd wonder why it even got to where it got to, but obviously there were other issues.
Okay.
But
like what's being said, you know, sometimes you can choose what you decide to say, you know. So I don't know. I'm just.
Oh no.
Of course.
Oh no. No, that's fine. You know, we talked through everything, but it did get to a patch where that conversation and communication did break down in our relationship, and that's where it went downhill. But all the years before that, it was a case where we did talk through everything. I'm just thinking about the two of you with this great mission that you're on together, and the knowledge that you're blessed with as well. Would you say, in terms of difficulties, is it a case where you just generally have a conversation, so there's no shouting, no screaming, no throwing, no pans at each other, or is it a case where we grab the chairs and bring back to back? How does it help you generally through your relationship? I know that there was a few questions. I know that there were a few.
Definitely
no throwing pan.
No, but definitely raise voices. You know, we're human just like anyone, and I think there's times when, you know, it's like a pressure cooker. There's times when you're just like, rah, and it all comes out. But at the same time, I think it's about how you deal with that energy when it does come out. Sometimes you almost need the release. It's necessary. You know, it's out there. You may have your little moment where you're upset, but then because it's now out there, you have to deal with it. And so, yeah, we deal with it. It's never ever got to the point where, you know, we've had to walk out the house or anything, but we definitely don't hold back. There are times when it will all come out and it's not necessarily pleasant, but we move on and we get over it. And yeah, I just think that sometimes that release is necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Go on. She's gonna.
And so go ahead.
No, I was going to say, no, I'm still happy to hear that. You know, especially when you're a power couple out there, people might have the perception that, you know, you never have to do that release, as you've put it. You never got to, you know, shout a bit here and there to express yourself, and it's all.
We are definitely not perfect. We have our flaws, you know, we are just like everyone else. So no, we are just normal everyday people, and you know, we have our ups and downs, but we just, I guess, learn to deal with it. And I think for us as well is we're very committed to each other and our family, and so that is always kind of like our grounding point. It's like, okay, cool, what issue do we have? How are we going to find a solution to deal with it? So I think it's more that mindset that makes sure that it never goes too far left or too far right.
Yeah, but it's also exactly what I was echoing to Sister Nu, whereby when you're living in association or with or together with that spiritual understanding, you have a wider framework. Your mental paradigm goes beyond. You know, exactly as you mentioned that, you know, that there might be some people who think we would never have an argument. Why not? You know, life is like for lack of being able to think of a lovely analogy, it's like a pizza, no? So there are different elements that make it up. And having an argument is part of that. It's not necessarily a negative thing. No, it can be, exactly, the point at which you need to release. You know, maybe that's her temperament, and she'll tell you this. I don't generally get angry. When I get angry, it's very ugly. So I don't get angry. But I don't get physical. Never have that, ever will. What I will do is I'll just say, okay, you know what? Let's take some time out. We're going to think about this. Yeah? You note down the points that you want to get across. Yeah? Because in shouting, nobody's really going to go far. Yeah? You only want to outshout each other. Write the points down. Then we sit down and everybody brings their points forward. And we discuss around the points that are causing the contention.
Fantastic.
Do you know what I mean? So effectively, we're trying to find a solution to why it had to get to the raised voices, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to find strategies to cope. We're all human. There's no one that can claim they've never had any form of argument. And again, it depends on how you see the value of what you might call an argument. So, yeah.
Definitely. No, it's fantastic. No, it's fantastic. I'm a strong believer that life happens, but it's how you deal with it. It's how you cope with it. It's how you learn from it. It's how you actually address it that matters. That's the real core of the person. So, no, that's fantastic. Positive reinforcements. So if any couple listening, it's okay to have your fight. No pat throwing, definitely not.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's then about how you then unite together and address the differences in the arguments, and you know, how you can communicate with the other person to help to resolve the matter. And I heard when I tuned in, I was hearing some really good tips in terms of the whole back-to-back sitting on a chair. That's definitely something we talked about at Kings and Queens as well. So yeah.
I was just
what I did also was go on.
To add, sorry, can you hear me, DeLeon? Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I suppose what you're saying is it that, you know, when you talk about it, it's like a soup. Your relationship's like a soup with all these different ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, that fiery part is like the spice.
Yeah.
Just that little trickle of spice.
Yeah, of course. Much better analogy than mine. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if we go back to the work of Sabon Fusome, where she talks about stagnation, which is really powerful, and she talks about, you know, when our relationships, we fall from grace, whether within ourselves, or we fall from grace within our relationship, when the energy inside of that dynamic, or whatever dynamic, is stagnant.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that, you know, you recognize and accept the soup that you're in, yeah, and I suppose a healthy soup, a soup that has lots of elements that work, but that level of spice is normal, and it's not that we're looking for perfection.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because if we keep looking for perfection in an instant gratification age, you know, we're doomed to fail. So I definitely hear the importance of, you know, a relationship that's balanced is what I hear. A very balanced, you know, it's balanced in its purpose, it's balanced in its ritual, it's balanced in its love, it's balanced in its giving, and it's balanced in its protection, and it's balanced inside of, you know, understanding and acceptance. And I think that really, you know, makes for a great, you know, recipe for, you know, a great soup that you two are. A great soup.
Good analogies, but you took it away, as they say.
What can I say?
Indeed, Oki's own word.
I'm a foodie.
In Dean Oki's Okai own word, you guys sounds, you know, to be fully merged.
Fully merged.
Oh, fully merged. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in all areas, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's like having the four arms to the chair. It's fully merged in that respect. So what advice then would you give to, or what would you say if you know, in a day and age as we are, we've got a lot more of our people becoming open-minded. Some of them are already in a relationship at the point where they come to a certain level of understanding and wanting to develop that. That in itself can have an impact on their relationship. So is there anything from the ancestors that we can draw upon that perhaps we can that could use to support that relationship?
Okay. So, well, you know, we did speak to Sister Nuke quite a bit about that. And I guess what I can add to that further is that,
oh, I'm sorry if you've already covered that.
yeah, that's fine. You know, we talked about some of the practices, like, you know, you mentioned about the circle. We talked about ensuring that both do ritual together, because you see, in ritual, you state your intent. So the other partner is hearing what your intent is for the relationship. Yes, you're both in a sense guiding yourself. Yes, because the other person is learning from the other. It's not like, if you want to call it perhaps a certain type of Abrahamic prayer where, you know, you're just encouraged to pray in your mind. Nobody hears what you're saying. In this space, you're speaking what you want. Yes, so your other partner can tell, okay, this is what I would like for our relationship to be. And as a result, perhaps I can also start to bear this in mind in terms of the way I behave and respond towards my partner. So it's important to be able to do ritual together. It's important to be able to hear each other's aspirations and hopes. Yes, because what we're doing at the same time as doing that is molding each other. Yes, I was going to say a quote, but I can't remember what the quote is. I'm not going to go there. But basically, it's to work towards a common objective without losing your individual self. Yes, because you're both important in that equation.
It sounds a bit like the work, you know, when you talk about, you know, the work of the prophet, you know, the book The Prophet, when he talks about being a guitar and being a steps, you know, to the guitar, you make up, you know, that instrument, but you stand alone as one string. So it makes sense. I mean, a question I have, and it is a personal question, and you don't have to answer it about you.
Okay.
But according to this book here, which is an Afrocentric Guide to Spiritual Union, I don't know if you've come across it, but inside of this book, he talks about a bit about sex, and it talks about the importance of the ritual of sex, but also the importance of prayer and before sex. And making your intention for manifestation. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Yeah. No, it's.
Don't get shy now.
No. I'm not getting shy. Not at all. Sex is perhaps the highest form of energy that anyone can give it, because sex can create another living being. This is just its basic, should we say, understanding of. But then obviously there is more. So yeah, no, 100%. List them before. Again, thank you for bringing that up, because this is where you see that the listing of things, noting them down. This is very important for even you, the person that thinks you want these things. Because listing them alone make you put them into tangible form. You've already given them a physical reality. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. You know, before can be fine. And also during the process, you can visualize. Yes. So it's actually a good thing, especially based on how your mind works. You can't keep everything in mind. Yeah, why not? Check the list that you've written. You know, but maybe for some listeners, it might sound a bit like, okay, well, you're in the middle of all this passion and whatnot, and you're gonna look at it this.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Stop.
It all depends.
But it could be, but it's a mental list. I mean, he'll have his, you'll have yours. You know, combined list you might also have. And I think we can't take it for granted that sex in itself is an energy of its own. If you're looking at the root chakra, if you're looking at Kundalini energy, any energy, you know, if that base energy still has energy and can be used, you know, in a way that's not just about self-indulgence.
Yeah. In a creative way, to create. Yep, definitely 100%. So as I said, if your mental list is not good enough, I like that suggestion. You can write it before, but you know, again, the feelings within the passion is what in a sense is a bit like the seed. So yeah, I guess reading it before will be good, but also I think try while you're in that state of ecstasy or
because you're in a heightened state. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. So within that time, yeah, find a minute or stick it up on the bedpost. I don't know. At least you can at it. Yeah, so you get a reminder, because you know you can easily get carried away and forget that you had a
focus.
This wasn't about having fun and enjoyment. It had another purpose.
For sure.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, for me, I'm quite visual, so I see things as opposed to wanting to write them down. So just work with your own, should we say, ability. Yeah, what works for you.
And just with any other ritual setting, also make sure the space is also cleared out, cleansed out, whether it's the sage or frankincense, those type of things, because it's a ritual, so it should be prepared in the same way. As DALIAN mentioned, it's a very high energy point, so it makes sense to clear that area fully of anything that you may have picked up throughout the day also. So that would be something I would say.
I mean,
awesome.
I'm glad you went on to speak about. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Clearly.
Okay. I'm glad you went on to speak on that point, because I think when you talk about things picking up, like a spiritual debris that we pick up during the day, and I don't think we realize, even down to, you know, whether it's you're working your 9 to 5, you're bringing home a particular corporate energy into your home, whether it's school energy, you know, when your children coming home from the school dynamics or friends. I think we cannot underestimate the kind of spiritual debris that we pick up along our day. Yeah. So the importance of cleansing that, and then obviously, like you're saying, coming into your intimate part, those things should be clear before you're entering that.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely.
For sure.
Would you say then that doing the spiritual rituals, it can help you to manage your masculine and feminine energy that we all have anyways, but obviously society of, you know, the way that we're programmed really for us women to focus a lot more into our masculine energy and to demasculize our men. Would you say the rituals can even help us to balance our masculine and feminine energy? I suppose you've answered it generally anyways, but it's good to bring that side of it into the conversation, if that hasn't already been touched on, as I haven't been privy to the full.
Sorry, I didn't mean anything by that time. I was just, you know, making the point, but actually, noticed we brought it back again, and we took it even further than we had initially with me. So all is good. All is good.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely important to tap into your own feminine energy, and something that I've experienced myself is particularly working with water energy. So we're looking at rites like Yemaja or Oshun. What I found is when calling upon those energies, I found that I would naturally start dancing. And the dance that I would do would be very centered around, like I guess, my hip area and all that. So I'm finding that I'm naturally tapping into something that was in my core that I'm not even consciously aware of doing, but because those energies represent fertility and birth and so forth, then it stands to reason that it would be that sort of root chakra, sacral chakra that would be sort of being worked. And so I do feel that by tapping into our energies and not being ashamed, not seeing these things as sexual movements, it's something to be ashamed of, embarrassed of, it's something that helps us. There was a time when I did it and I never received, like sometimes I get period cramps. But that particular time when I did my sacred dance that I was intuitively guided to do, I had no cramps whatsoever. So these movements that have been, you know, it's shown that, oh, you shouldn't do that, this is bad, you should cover up. They're actually ways of healing and correcting ourselves internally. So yeah, definitely. It's very important for us to embrace our femininity fully, because as you said, we could end up operating more masculine than feminine, and then we've lost the balance that exists within ourselves.
Yeah, I think, and then for men as well, perhaps what you can encourage within yourself and your own behavior is levels of understanding. Yeah, perhaps even going over and beyond. And if you notice, one of the stereotypes that is attracted to females is apparently that women can talk more than men or can listen more than men. But I know many brothers too that do even more than most women I know. Yes, so we should be careful not to fall into these so-called roles that only belong to some certain people and not everyone else. And we should learn ways in which we can use them positively. And you understand, to further our unions in whatever way possible. So if it's a man, you know, you don't need to be this so-called alpha male type figure all of the time. Obviously, there will be times when perhaps you may need to assume that position, but recognize that that is not just you. Do you understand? And we see another thing whereby even when this so-called recession started, and there were a lot of men who, because they lost their jobs, were killing themselves. Yes, just committing suicide because they couldn't face whatever had been left behind. Now, this will then draw you back into this idea of the man being the breadwinner and he's the one who does everything and he takes care of his wife. But why can't your wife also take care of you? Why, you're not human? What's wrong with accepting assistance from a woman? See, again, then that takes us back to this idea that is programmed into our heads that, again, if you're doing that, you're less than a man. Yeah? So why? You know, you need both to survive. So why would you not be willing to take that assistance too? So yeah, some of these paradigms are very toxic to the way we see ourselves and the way we behave as a result.
I mean, would you say then? Sorry, would you say then? I mean, all right, we can generalize, but we talk about the masculine and feminine because if you look at the, you know, the logic, even down to purpose, freedom, and drive, focus is often a masculine, considered a masculine attribute. Yeah. The feminine is fluid, and I suppose ritual in itself, being in touch with nature, being that way, you know, the co-creators with God as woman, but also being that these elements from nature that you spoke on earlier, they also, I think what I hear when you share about them is that even if you are an alpha male then, or, you know, very masculine, especially when you talk about, you know, men under pressure, jobs, committing suicide, you know, how important the element of ritual becomes, and, you know, nature that surrounds you, and using that and drawing on that and balancing that, because, you know, we came from a mother and a father, and therefore in that sense of the word, you know, you will encompass as a man or a woman the masculine and the feminine principle by default, and it's where your imbalances lie that shifts things, you know, in your relationships. I don't think there's anything wrong with levels of tradition, but I think it's about the balance of things. And I think it's, you know, when you bring ritual into the space, it helps a man in particular, you know. So I think women often have a relationship to spirit and God. I think we can't get away from that conversation because we're co-creators with God.
Of course.
But I think it's an important factor when men are in this focus, in this drive, in this mission purpose. Sometimes I think that I mean, I have a 17-year-old son who wants to be an MP, and I can see already where he is, you know, having to pull him back to source, but also having to have him get back into his relationship with the creator then. And I think when you have that relationship to the divine, the source, the creator. I think that allows you to recognize spirit deeper.
Yeah.
Be open to ritual more so. Yeah. I think when you are, what I have seen or experienced, I think there are, and if we look at the sons of now, in particular the sons of now, who are dealing with, you know, gangs, etc., a lot of that energetically, you know, is again a very much a toxic imbalance of masculine and feminine, or what they think is masculine then. So I think that is important then for us to, you know, how do you think then we can, I say, bridge the gap between so much that is happening for those, look, we can put this into our bubble and we can say, look, we're conscious, we're aware, we're lucky to have a platform with Black Eyes TV and be able to have this conversation right now. Yeah. But there are people who, you know, you meet who are dealing with issues, who are dealing with their sons being in gangs. We're dealing with family. How could we reach families in a holistic way, you think, that could, you know, people could present ritual to them without them feeling, you know, awkward about it? You know, what kind of, you know, if I was to take my 3 sons, we went camping this holidays in the summer, and, you know, we did a fire, there were fire rituals, there's a lot of that going on. And my children, they're lucky to actually have around them. And I recognize how many children around them don't. How can we bridge the gap between those who do ritual or who look at ritual or and see the benefits of ritual, bridge the gap between those who see the benefits and those who don't?
That's a very, very important question you've asked there. Yeah? But the answer is even simpler. You see, and it goes
speculate.
Yeah, I'm not even speculating. I'm actually going to contribute an answer to it. Yeah, which is that, and it ties back in with the fact that we don't do what we might call evangelizing, like the Abrahamic faith do, because nobody can bring you to God if you're already God. The issue we're dealing with is the fact that you're not aware that you're God. Yes, so I can't force something on you. Rather, I have to embody that and show that in the way I live my life and the way my life goes, because then it's almost like a kind of peer pressure factor. You then say, okay, you know what, maybe that person is doing something that I'm not, you know, like, you know, I'm going to church or the mosque every day that day, and you know, my sons are on road, this is happening to them, that is happening to them. Because there's nothing that you're doing to ground yourself. There's nothing that you're doing to protect yourself. You know, so really the most important thing we can do is to live by example. The life that we're living is what will bridge that gap. Because if somebody is seeing you do things that some Hollywood movie has told them is some and they're not supposed to go near, but then they look and they're thinking, because, you know, unfortunately the world we live in is very materialistic, you know, why does he have a bigger house than me? How does he have a nicer house than me? But I've been doing everything society says is acceptable and civilized, quote and unquote. Yeah? You then give them that example. They already know, hold on a minute, maybe I'm the one that needs to change. We can't force it. It's not gonna happen, because as you know, and I can tell from the conversation so far, ritual will open aspects of your psyche that nothing else can. So we can sit here and tell you about it all day, but until you start to do it, you don't know, because you won't experience it.
As Dee said, I don't think it's something that you can convince someone to do. You will naturally be guided to it. So as he said, you can be your own role model. You do you, and you keep working on yourself. Others will naturally come to you and ask you, what are you doing? I've noticed that you've changed. Tell me more. And I think that's the only way. You can't force push onto someone. I know from my own journey that I wasn't even raised in a strong Christian household that I went to church. But I know in my own self that when it came to applying ritual to my life, I was scared. And I thought, wow, you know, this programming is very strong because that fear was in me. So, and it was only when I was ready to make the step that I personally made that decision myself. So it's not something that someone will do unless they are also at that point when they're like, I am ready to make that change. So as Dee said, it's not something you can force. It's something that you do when it's your time.
And do you have anyone publicly that will say anything negative about the rituals? Do you have anyone that come forth that talk against anything that you do? Because again, I'm thinking about the different mindsets within our community, and I'm thinking about the programming, and I'm thinking that you know, a lot of the conversation tonight, it feeds very well for those who are open to it. So those who may not be as open to it, that's not ready for it, do you have any comments from them and how they may feel towards this?
Good question. I'm sure there's lots of people who have negative feedback towards us, but they tend not to tell us directly. However, we have an experience at a BFI screening about 3 years ago, 4 years ago or so. We had a double screening with the Fela Kuti documentary. Obviously, we know what Fela Kuti stood for. He was very proud of his Yoruba culture. He felt no way. However, there was somebody in the, well, in fact, there was quite a few. We had people physically walk out of the cinema when our film was on because they didn't want to get involved with this stuff. And to the point where someone even approached you and said something, and then somebody actually went up to DeLeon.
Well, they were asking me why, this is a Nigerian brother, by the way, why would we want to make such a film? What's the purpose of making the film? But the same guy was there cheering on Fela's genius, not realizing that that genius came from the fact that he understood and was practicing his culture. You see, a lot of time, this is where Africans/Blacks have really got the wrong end of the stick. Yeah, we seem to think you can partition African culture into the bits that you like. Oh, I'm doing some African dance I learned from the man that I paid £5 to. So I'm fully in touch with my Africanness. As in Nkrumah had a code. I wasn't born as an African. Africa was born in me. That means it's something that first starts in the psyche, in the mind. And when you're dealing with matters of the mind, you're already dealing in the spiritual, sacred space. Look around you, your room now, Tamwa. The chair you're sitting on, where did that chair start from? It started from somebody's mind. So, you know, when we hear all these African Blacks telling you how backward this is and it doesn't make any sense, personally, I can see why we have the level of dysfunction we have now. Because the very core, the essence of what African spiritual, social, political organization and just beingness all goes back to what we call spirit. So if you're not even making an effort to even understand it, remember, nobody has to become a practitioner overnight, but at least be willing to listen to it. You know what I mean? Who was it? I think it's Aristotle that says something along the lines of, it's a sign of an intelligent mind to obtain information without accepting it. Yeah? Meaning, you don't have to accept it. Okay, I've listened to you. That made sense. That didn't make sense. Whatever. I take it further or I leave. But you find out Blacks, quote unquote, are very resistant to hearing about this. Yeah, there's a conflict in our spirit. It's like the solution we need, they put in a program that works so perfectly well, that is pushing. But again, as I told Sister Newton before, we don't have to worry about any of these things. Because remember, once upon a time, the work me and V did, they would have burnt us a long time ago. Yeah, as some kind of demons. So the only thing that is constant in life is change. And in time, everything will change. Do you know what I mean? So our only purpose is put the work out there. add to that conversation. Because in time, people will see his relevance, and no one will have to tell them this is where you need to go.
And those who are drawn to it, we naturally gravitate to it anyway. It's there now.
But it's funny how we would be crucified or burnt for practicing our ancestral given rights, really. And yet there are programs on TV like Charmed. I don't know if you're aware of it. And there are other programs on TV as well, where practicing spiritual rituals is, you know, it's a special gift, and, you know, it makes you, like, it feeds into the extreme positive, but these are free white witches. That's practicing, you know, very publicly on TV, and that's okay, but yet when it comes to us, it is so frowned upon.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and he also tells you how it all depends on how you tell the narrative. Yeah. So in that Charm, or if it's Harry Potter, or even Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars is actually the biggest one, because the other day I was watching one of the animations, and I'm going to show it to my son, because the main character starts speaking to the spirit of the planet that they're on, and it takes the form of a wolf. And this wolf is teaching them how to fight off the dark ones, the Sith Lord, you know, like the Darth Vaders and the Emperor. So when you see Charmed and whatnot, again, all of a sudden the magic is for something good. Yeah, they put them against evil. Whereas when we're looking at African ritual now, it's rather the evil one that is trying to usurp the positive. So it's all about how the story is being told. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, we all have, as Dr. Amos Wilson said, that little white man inside of us. And we think from that mind more than we do from an African mind, because let's face it, we hardly know. Even continental Africans hardly know what their culture is actually really about. Yeah. So we have to go on a journey of reclaiming, re-understanding, re-educating, and learning and relearning what we actually need to know. And it's going to be a very long journey too.
So no, that quite feeds that feeds quite nicely into what Kings and Queens promote. That's exactly what we're about in terms of learning and relearning key ingredients of sustainable relationship in that respect, and it's based on our cultures, our own African roots. So that's basically what you're saying that we should really be doing anyways. So I'm glad to, you know, have created this platform and for it to have extended in this sense, where, as Sister Mut said, we can all have this space to be discussing it. And so many people are listening, and all the other people that will be listening after this moment, because we're basically singing that same tune: learn and relearn your roots, your culture, based on African principles, and that's where really, when it comes to relationship, you will be able to create and sustain healthy looking relationships like your own.
Yeah, definitely. We try. Yeah.
I do have one final question, if you don't mind. If we could kind of go back to the position of the man and what he thinks, you know, being masculine is about. And we know, you know, in terms of relationship, it's about teamwork. So I'm recalling a conversation we had at one of the Kings and Queens couples events, where we were having quite a similar conversation, and the men that were there with their wives, they were happy to, you know, play as a team, except when it came to one thing. Housework, in particularly doing the dishes.
Right. Okay.
Do you help out with doing the dishes at home?
Well, we're to be honest, anything to do with housework, cooking, everything. I can do it better than V.
Like
And I know she. You can ask her. You can ask her. She's not gonna deny it either because it's true. You know what I mean?
She's mothering. She's mothering. You know, you're doing your.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
mothering. She's raising gods and goddesses. She's got work to do. It's a hard job.
Why would I even have a problem doing the housework? Don't I live in this house? I live in this house too. So why would I not even want to do it? Again, it's a bit, maybe it could also be due to the fact that I grew up with my mom only. And my mom, she blended everything. Yeah, whether you were the boy or the girl, you learned how to sweep the house, you learn how to mop the floor, you learn how to cook, you learn how to wash. So even from leaving home at 19, I could be independent because she given me life skills, which really is what everyone, I would say, should teach their child. Because you have many children who, and in England we see most can't even leave home because they don't understand responsibility. Do you understand? Yeah. And giving somebody that task at that young age, you're responsible for cleaning this. It kind of primes you already because it's preparing you for life later. Yeah.
See, I agree.
I have no problem with housework.
Sorry, go on.
I said I have no problem with housework.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, yeah, I'm glad to know. But I don't think the problem was the fact that they didn't know how to do it. I think they were all brought up in similar background like that. And even in my own home, as you know, I grew up in a single parenting home as well. My mum taught us all how to do it. So I don't think the issue there was that they didn't know how, but more it's this perception,
right,
that when they marry, they then have a wife that you know should be able to do all of that for them. Not to say that they're not willing, because I have to be fair to our men as well. It's not to say that they weren't willing to take on other tasks in the home. But predominantly, I don't know what it is about the dishes. They just...
Well, okay. You see, for me, one of the reasons I like the dishes is the same reason I like showers. When I'm doing the dishes, it gives me a chance to think. Some of the best ideas I've had is while I'm washing dishes, because there's just that monotony. Yeah, your mind is free in that moment. So maybe it's a personal thing. Do you know what I mean? But people find these moments of thought in doing many things. For me, one of the times I've noticed that is when I'm washing the dishes, because it's so monotonous that, yeah, I don't know, there's something about that monotonous.
I mean, if you strip it back, I mean, what I hear is when you strip that back to take it, you know, into context of ritual, is that, you know, one, you're using the element of water. And two, that energy, whether it's the water running, the water cleaning,
that's right,
the cleansing of water, that is almost purifying your mind then.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For you to receive. Definitely,
because it's been happening since as long as I can remember. Me and dishes is like no problem. I don't know. So maybe if you pick a different housework, there might be something else that might come up. Yeah, you know, because of the conversation we all learn, or if you're open to the learning. So yeah, no. There are moments of deep thought for me, particularly dishes or being in the shower.
Okay, so to get our men to do more dishes.
Yeah. Go on. You know,
they probably need to do.
Go on, finish. Sorry? Yeah, I said finish, and then I'll Sorry?
Yeah, okay. For our men to basically do more dishes, they would need to link it back to the spiritual nature of things. And basically use it as a form of practice and a ritual, really. So bringing that positive side to it and what they can gain from it, rather than seeing it as a chore.
I think there's that too, Tamara. Yes, there is that too, but also the realization that You know what I mean? Look, don't you think your wife is also gonna get tired and bored at some point? You know, there's 7 days in the week. Why don't you just take 3 of them? You don't even have to take more than that. Just take 3. It's called giving someone a break. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, I think that helps to not let people bottle in anger. Because, you know, at some time when you're doing it for so long and you feel like you're the only one doing it, just like we feel in all other senses, you feel like, hold on a minute, why is it just me? How about you? What are you doing? And then that can just start bringing in a whole heap of other things. So it's about seeking balance. Yes, and for me, being able to share those chores encourages that balance. Because it gives B2 the time to do something else that she wants to do. And I also feel like, yeah, I'm playing and contributing something worthwhile back into the relationship.
But it also goes back to what you know, again, going back to the original conversation around spirit. And you know, if you're looking at, it takes alignment. I mean, what I'm hearing when you're talking about that is the alignment of, okay, doing the physical things that then free you up for your spiritual work. Understand what I mean? So it makes sense that, you know, those, obviously the mundane, you know, we can all have these wonderful, you know, like you're talking about the champagne, all that kind of stuff. We can always have those kind of things, but we have to do with the domestics of a real relationship.
100%.
And you know, when you deal with ritual in your life and understand ritual, everything you're doing is in ritual. You know, you're living ritual. Ritual is your life. So it means that, you know, when you're doing your dishes, you know, you're freeing up both of you to go off and do a ritual later, or create time later, or meditate later, or channel later. It makes sense that, you know, you share the load in a time where, you know, busyness is, you know, time is a commodity. To be sharing the load when you're in a position where ritual becomes your spiritual practices, you know, are so important to you. And the work, again, going back to the work that you're doing, the work that you're doing is so vital and important. It makes sense to be able to share that. You talked about at the beginning, you know, about the purpose of a relationship and how you guys came together in terms of, you know, taking on this project for, you know, for 5 years, did you say? So I think, you know, again, it teaches patience, and, you know, ritual and nature is patience. It's possible and not patience.
Exactly that. And, you know, going back to your Thomas' point as well, that if we're talking about relationship, teamwork, then I don't see that being how you sharing if you're not sharing the load. Do you know what I mean? Because to me, that's how I see it. That is an aspect of teamwork too. You know, there's 7 days, you can take 4, I'll take 3, maybe we flip it around, that's a day. It's this journey of constantly getting to know each other again, and what makes us tick, and what makes us, what motivates us, you know, what calls us to action. It's a never-ending process, you know?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, so when you have your next event, tell the guys, get on some of those yellow gloves.
Well, better still, you can come to our events and you can tell the guys.
Yeah, and I was, but guess what? On that same day, the 16th, V has a kind of mommy's group that she has to go to. So I'll be at home taking care of the children. So unfortunately,
look, we have other events. We do have other events that you know, we'd be happy for you to come to other events if you can't.
No problem.
But you know, and you know, even as a couple, I mean, you know, you're you know, by all means, you know, sharing sharing what you have to share with us is so vital. And you know, a successful couple, but a power couple is very important. You know, we're seeing less and less power couples now. And so it's important. There was a influx of them about 10, 15 years ago, and it sort of dwindled out. So, you know, it really takes, you know, a lot to sustain them. So when you share what you both share so freely and so openly, and we really thank you for it, you know, share, you know, openly about how ritual plays a part in your life and how it can play a part in other people's lives. it makes all the difference. And you can almost sense the lightness of your relationship. And no doubt it gets, you can have intense moments, and working together can be a very intense time. But I really recognize, even from down to the conversation you're having with us, I really recognize the lightness of your relationship and the ease and flow and the ebbs and flows of your relationship, and and what you're willing to push through to make it work.
Definitely.
So thank you.
Definitely, because it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And considering our anniversary event on the 16th of December, it's about celebrating successful relationships in our community. What I would perhaps suggest, it would be good if there is some aspects of your relationship to be shared with the audience. Maybe we could consider a recorded video, sharing a bit about your home, your relationship with the audience, to let them see, real life successful Black relationships. Yes, we discuss it on air tonight in depth, and even if you didn't get to do the video, there's so much for us to even link in and share with the audience. But it's also great for them to be able to see. So maybe it's just something that you could consider doing for us for the 16th. But as Mr. Mick says, definitely looking to have you as facilitators to future workshop. And Dalian, I know you're part of the Kings and Queens United WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
So Verona, maybe that's something you can join and help contribute to your thoughts as well.
Yeah, feel free to join me to the group. So I'm sure Dee can join me to the group. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
No problem.
I thank you both so much. I know we've gone quite in depth in terms of time, in terms of conversation.
Yeah.
With technicalities, Sister Mook, you've been absolutely amazing for stepping in and getting the show rolling and just keeping it going. So thank you so much. Black Ice, Terry and Ritchie behind the scenes. You guys are absolutely amazing, and the way you work so hard tonight, I really appreciate that. Again, to the power couple, thank you. And I know I will speak to you and see you again.
And thanks for having us on the show. And it's been a very, very good conversation.
Thank you for the wisdom.
Yeah, and for those who are listening and tuned in, if they do want to hear more from us and find out about the works that we're doing, www.ancestralvoices.co.uk. We have 2 films available. Ancestral Voices 1, which is called Ancestral Voices Esoteric African Knowledge. That was our first film. And now the most recent release is Ancestral Voices Spirit is Eternal. And DALIAN also has a book by the exact same name. So there's a book and a film.
That's right.
And they're complements to each other.
Just like
right. And just to let the people know, DALIAN will be back on shortly next week, hopefully, to go in on his products and the DVDs, and we're really going to talk about the project properly. If you haven't heard about it, he'll go in on it. So we're going to really peel that back, promote it properly, and give it the shot in the arm that it needs on Black Eyes TV 7. Also, there is a pre-recorded interview that we did from, how long ago was that now? Good year and a bit.
About 2 years, a minimum of 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years now at the British Museum, where he took us around. We looked at a few artifacts, me and Mr. Riggs. So yeah, go to the channel, check that out, have a look at that. But next week we will definitely be having him back on to go in on Ancestral Voices and break that down. So again, thank you to the Kings and Queens United. And again, before you two go, please tell the people exactly where the event is, address, time, date, before we leave, please. Whichever one of you chooses to do that.
Go ahead,
now.
see.
Thank you.
So thanks, Rich. We've got two events coming up. We've got our singles event on the 1st of December. And we've also got our anniversary event on the 16th of December. They're both going to be at Rock Island Bar and Grill, 320 Old Kent Road, London, SE1 5UU. You can get your tickets on kingsandqueensunited.com. I was going to say I'll post the link in the comment box, but I remember last time YouTube is like, no links. So I'll just quickly spell it out. That's KINGSANDQUENSUNITED.com, or you can search for us on Eventbrite as well. How to dress for the anniversary event. You know, you can put on your wonderful gown. You can come and look as beautiful as you want. It's not necessarily a black tie event, but it's a celebration. It's a festive um, time that we're celebrating achievement and success. There will be a dinner and dance. There will be entertainment. Speakers, live performances, I think I said that, raffles. There will be a lot to enjoy for the evening. So it's a feel-good moment. So whatever outfit that makes you feel good, then that's what you should wear.
So that's what I like to hear. And again, thank you to both of you sisters, giving us the information, asking the questions, keeping it fluid. Me and Terry didn't have to do a damn thing today. So yeah,
apart from the background work.
No, don't worry. The back room, the technicals was more than enough to keep me busy, and listening to all the good information was tidy. And again, people, remember this: the title of the show, Ancestral Voices of Kings and Queens, and we've just been dealing with spirit within the relationship, rituals to help. But key element to remember, people: if you don't work on yourself, if you don't deal and know yourself, it's not going to work out trying to find these answers in other people.
Exactly that.
Yeah, it does not work like that. It's a hard truth. It's a hard one to accept when you got to look at yourself and have some self-realization. But again, that is where it begins. Um, the key element to African spirituality is it has practical elements, yeah, as seen to the unseen. So, if you don't deal with the practical, getting spiritual is not going to help you, and vice versa. They work hand in hand. So try to remember them key points. Look out for the next show with Deli going in on Ancestral Voices. Terry, you there, brother? You got anything to say to the people before we sign out? Is he there?
Oh, one last thing about Friday.
About?
This Friday on Black Ice TV.
Well, now, Friday, we're supposed to be having Robin Walker joining us as well to also talk about the history of relationships, Black relationships. We are working on his technical issues of getting him on. So at this point, look out for that on Friday. Again, the ladies will be on giving him the business, giving him the questions, grilling him, looking at aspects of relationships throughout history. So look out for that show, definitely. Thank you for reminding me, T. I don't know whether Terry's coming back on. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you to everyone who's been watching. Support your Black businesses. Support the other Black media that's out there. Big up to HMP TV. Big up to Got Kush TV, Titans TV, Content Over Everything, Respect, Speakers Club, Sarnetta, Black News. Yeah, you got to support our media so we can get our own narrative out there and receive the information how it was meant to be given. Yeah, so thank you everyone for tuning in, and we are out of here. Peace, peace, peace.
All right. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Take good care. Yeah.
Thank you for a good
Okay.
Thanks for a lively session.